Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are now doing this weekly, as you know. Every Wednesday we'll come to you live for a period of time. We have news today, so why don't we jump right in. Let's start with the county data. Governor Cuomo spoke today about a nationwide spike in cases. He is accurate. We continue to monitor increased cases in a whole host of states. There are still new cases in this region and in the state of New York, but the good news has been that the Dutchess County numbers and the Mid-Hudson region numbers have been relatively stable, but let's jump into those data points while we can. So as of today, we have conducted 66,411 tests. You know that testing is still available. We encourage you, if you've traveled to a location that may have a high number of cases, or you feel ill yourself, or you've come into contact with somebody who may be exhibiting some of those symptoms, please be tested. You can reach out to your physician. You can visit dutchessny.gov to get information regarding testing. 66,411 tests conducted. That's identified 4,248 positive cases over the course of these last 5 months, 4.5 months. We are monitoring 175 active cases with 5 individuals hospitalized and 152 individuals have succumbed to the disease. What I want you to know, though, is we monitor these cases every day. There are emerging and identified clusters in counties throughout the Mid-Hudson region. There is not such a designated location in Dutchess, but we do share concern that if we loosen up on some of the restrictions, as we loosen up on the restrictions and we become more comfortable in going about our daily lives, you want to be sensitive to continuing to maintain that physical distancing when appropriate, wear a face covering when you can't, and to be very careful that if you're not feeling well or you've come into contact with someone who may have contracted the disease, that you're prepared for that. But monitoring our cases, I also want to tell you that we've been very successful with our contact tracers in making initial contacts. Our number of daily new positive cases relatively low. And community spread, meaning sort of the generic spread in a community setting of the particular disease, is limited among those cases. I think 10 to 15% of our new cases truly identified as community spread. The area that concerns us, and I want to be clear about this, is as you test positive, we are to contact you. So you've conducted a test, you test positive, we are notified of that positive test. Now, I don't know your name, but the public health officials do, and they're going to call you. Whether it's a contact tracer, volunteer, or one of our staff is going to call you. There are a good number, and I'd offer a good percentage, that aren't answering the calls and aren't engaging with us. Now, in fairness, it may mean that we just don't have the right numbers, but it also means that you may not be taking the call, or you may not you may not know the number, and therefore you're not communicating. This is not an intrusive process. These are volunteer and staff members in our public health department. Their goal is to say to you, first, you've tested positive, you know that, here are the precautions you should take, and could you help us identify individuals that you may have come into close proximity with? And again, the reason that that's important for us is because we just want to be able to inform those people that you may have come into close proximity, close contact with, that they too should take precaution. And if they do, we won't see clusters emerge. We won't see a spike in cases, and we won't see growth in hospitalization. And that is ultimately the goal. So I wanted to touch on those things. So there is news today, and let's jump right into it. So this morning, Governor Cuomo announced that as malls invest in and make use of enhanced ventilation system, malls can open on Friday. So malls across the state of New York can open up this Friday in this region if they have the ventilation requirements that have been identified by the State Department of Health. I am confident that the malls in Dutchess County and the organizations responsible for those malls know what is necessary to open. They may not open immediately on Friday, so be prepared for that, but they're going to be prepared to open, and that's good news for you, for me, and for the businesses within those malls. We don't have other restrictions as it relates to malls. However, we'll continue to communicate that, and our Think Dutchess Alliance and the economic development effort that we have underway, led by Assistant County Executive Ron Hicks. We'll continue to communicate with mall businesses. If you have a question and you're a mall business, you can reach out to us, but we want you to also use Dutchess Business Notification Network, the DutchessBNN.com, to get additional information. So malls can open on Friday in the state of New York with enhanced ventilation. Secondly, schools. The governor has outlined steps for school reopening. So as of July the 13th, the state will have provided school districts with basic guidance. I cannot tell you what that guidance is today because the state has not issued it. But as the state develops that and distributes that guidance on July the 13th, school districts will then submit reopening plans by July 31st. So every school district in the state will take the guidance that's provided to them by the state of New York. Will help to the degree we can in deciphering it, which is what county governments are doing every day. And school districts will then develop reopening plans that they will submit to the state of New York, and then those plans will each be approved or not the first week of August. And one of the things that we will do here in Dutchess County is once that guidance is available on the 13th, we will schedule a meeting, a phone call, Zoom meeting with all of the school superintendents in Dutchess County to talk about what their thought process is. And the governor specifically, to his credit, said he wasn't going to. He was just ducking a question. Could one region open schools and not another? Could one district open and not another? And he wasn't willing to answer at this time. I think that that's actually a good answer, which is we don't know yet. So I don't have any more information about whether Arlington District could open, but Wappinger may have a different process. But what I will tell you is as soon as those guidances are available, we will convene the superintendents. We'll talk through at least what their thought process is. They'll proceed with their plans. We will help them decipher some of the guidance, and then we'll communicate with you what each district is hoping to achieve. I am hopeful that the guidance allows for as much in-person teaching as possible, as much return to sort of normal as is safe, and then we'll work with school districts to accommodate, to decipher the state guidance. There is no update on gyms, theaters, or splashdown. Those still remain without guidance. We are pushing on those. We understand the concerns in particular with those businesses. You know as well as I that I've expressed our comfort with reopening those to the degree we can provide for safety. I personally need to get to the gym, but we're hopeful that the guidance gets developed soon, and we'll have an update on that. There is not yet update on indoor weddings and wedding venues. The state still has not provided. I understand the frustration. Dealt with a few brides who did not want to be classified as bridezillas, which I guess is a term. I know it is, but it's a real burden on them and on the businesses at this point. So the state really does need to get guidance on that. And no additional information on nursing home visitations, although. There are certain pilot initiatives going on in the state where nursing homes are taking some visitation, but that is in a very controlled environment, and the State Department of Health was monitoring those. So as of today, no update, but if and when they become available, we'll give them to you. The travel advisory, New York State, New Jersey, and the state of Connecticut. Governors announced this travel advisory. If you travel now to one of 19 states across this country for any period of time and return, or you're traveling from those states to this state, Connecticut or New Jersey, you must self-quarantine for 14 days. The states of Delaware, Kansas, and Oklahoma were added to that list, and those are now 19 states, and you can see those that are there. That we the state of New York with New Jersey and Connecticut require that travel advisory. And so the state is saying that it is a sort of a voluntary quarantine, a precautionary quarantine, but respectfully, if you don't adhere to that, the commissioner of the state health department and local health departments may mandate a quarantine, and it's necessary for you to comply. So please be sensitive to that. This is about your health and the health of others, and that's the response. We have begun phase 4. We are in phase 4 that began yesterday in Dutchess County in the Mid-Hudson region, the 7-county region. We began phase 4. Phase 4 included reopening of higher education, so colleges, universities. Most of ours have announced their plans. If there are questions regarding specific plans, we can always update you later. Low-risk indoor and outdoor arts and entertainment. And what I'd offer is, this stage is important to these businesses and the people who go to work in these businesses. It is not a massive reopening of the remaining activities. As we've said, gyms, theaters, amusements still remain closed. Malls now can open on Friday. But we do have a good number of arts and cultural and historic activities that exist in this county, and they're going to reopen. I mention that for 2 reasons. One, for those businesses and for those organizations, they're getting back to work, and for those people, these are jobs, and they'll go back to work. Every job is essential, and these individuals go back to work. But secondly, you should be aware, what that also means is we're going to have visitors. They're going to be tourists, and they're going to be visitors. Some will have come from states where, again, if as you know, if you're traveling from another state, you have to do this self-quarantine. That said, if you're traveling from other states, you're traveling in-state, we're going to have visitors. Be considerate of them. Dutchess Tourism has been working with our tourism destinations to really promote this sense of consideration. Wear a face covering when you can't engage in physical distancing, and be considerate of one another. So just be aware that's big business for Dutchess County, and those sites are big business for themselves and for us, but it's also going to mean we're going to see new faces in the neighborhood, and that's something that you just want to be sensitive to. And we ask as you're visiting Dutchess County to any number of our historic sites, farms, or cultural activities, any one of those destinations, please be considerate of us as well as you travel here. Emily asked if when group gatherings will be allowed to be more than 50 people. The short answer is we don't know yet. So the state guidance at the moment, and it is through the governor's order, is 50 people. 50 people in a social gathering. Now, churches can function, houses of worship can function at 50% indoor capacity, or there is no limit on outdoor services so long as every individual engages in social distancing and wears a face covering. So just as a reference to those activities. Again, no change yet, no update yet, and as someone will likely have asked or did ask, when does phase 4 end? The short answer is we don't know. That basically we're now in this holding pattern, hoping that gyms, theaters, amusements can open. But we're in this holding pattern where there's restricted capacity, and the state is going to make those determinations based on real cases. Again, the good news for the Mid-Hudson region and for Dutchess County has been that our numbers are holding steady low. No emerging clusters yet in Dutchess, but we are aware that is likely to occur. We're asking you to remain vigilant in taking those precautions. And please respond to our contact tracers as they contact you if you've tested positive. But if we take the right steps and do the right things, the restrictions will become lesser and lesser. Danielle, any insight on college openings? Colleges can reopen. Each college has its own expectation and plan. We have worked with the county's Behavioral and Community Health Department, giving regular assistance to our colleges. They're many, as you know, Marist, Vassar, Bard, Culinary Institute, Dutchess Community College here in this community, they all can reopen, and they're all reopening with certain restrictions. And what I think we'll do is perhaps next week be prepared to give you some detailed points on what some of the colleges are doing. I won't have everything, but we can at least advise you what Dutchess, Vassar, Bard, CIA, and others are doing, and how you might contact them if you have any specific questions. The same for Mike. When is DCC opening for classes? I don't have that answer as of this moment. If somebody on the county government staff can give us an answer before we close today, Mike, I'll give you an update. I don't know offhand what the DCC expectation is, but we'll try to get you an answer before we close out today. Kathleen, when can bowling alleys open? And again, the short answer is we don't know. We think that bowling alleys could function safely if you all engage in that distancing. I mean, you can envision like every other lane being open and not a lot of the, sort of the social, interaction, individual play, small groups, that sort of thing. But the state has not provided any guidance for bowling alleys, bowling alleys, theaters, gyms, or amusements. Robert, what's going on with martial arts schools? I think, Robert, we've given you what guidance we can. The state of New York is very clear on what. Well, it's a little bit contradictory. I think that we've provided what we can. If based on your interpretation, and I'd offer, if you are a school in that regard, certain school and camp activities like that can function, but you really need to evaluate that with your attorneys if you have one and your insurance provider. And if they are comfortable with the sort of the vagueness of the state order, you will not have a problem with Dutchess County. It really is. Our job is to tell you what those parameters are. If you can function within those parameters that the state has established and your advisors, lawyers, insurance agents feel comfortable with that, then you should proceed and you won't have any objection from us. We don't create new rules. We just help you try to interpret the current ones. Lisa Marie, I've received calls on my cell phone that say potential spam. Could that be a contact tracer? I mean, the short answer is it could be. However, most of the time you should receive on your screen something that says New York State Contact Tracer, Dutchess County Department of Health, or some reference to that, but it is absolutely possible that it could come up as potential spam. So I'm sorry to say that. I mean, I probably get 25 potential spam calls every half day. It may be valuable to pick those up and check. But it's likely, if it is a contact tracer, it's a human being who will say hello and you'll start asking you some questions. But it should come up with an identification on your phone. But it is, the way technology works, it is always possible that doesn't happen, but it is supposed to. Do hair salons still need to test every 14 days? The answer is yes, they still do in Phase 4. It's not as stringent as it once was when we were in the Phase 3 period, but it is once every 14 days. That is the current standard. Lisa, can we have weddings of more than 50 people for August 7th? If so, can we have dancing? Lisa, I do not want to be in the business of telling you whether or not you can have dancing. This is the deal. Outdoor weddings, as I understand it, a ceremony and an activity of 50 people or less could occur in a setting where it's permitted. If you're asking to have a wedding at a wedding venue, the state has not given those venues guidance. If you're asking if you can have 50 people in your backyard or a municipal park or some venue that is permitted to have outdoor events, even a church or house of worship, you could have a wedding. Currently, the businesses that would provide you dancing, DJ, for instance, catering, they're not permitted by state law currently, or the governor's emergency order, which has the force of law. They're not permitted to do those sort of activities. So it really is whatever they are feeling meets the guidance. And what I'd offer to you is that, could you have 50 people in your backyard for a wedding? Yes, you can. Especially if it's faith-based, you can have a larger event at a faith-based institution. You can likely serve some food, but the concept of that socialization and that interaction needs to be limited. If it's at a house of worship and it's outdoors, it's physical distancing among all of the participants. So would dancing occur? Probably not. If it's in your backyard, you're limited to those 50 people, in which case the expectation is you try to physically distance, you wear face coverings, but the expectation is up to 50 people, you would have obviously some social interaction. So that's the direction I can offer you. When will family court be open? This is these courts, even though they're called Dutchess County Court, Dutchess County Family Court, these are New York State courts. They're administered by the Office of Court Administration and the New York State court system. They are slowly reopening. The courts are handling certain cases. A lot of cases not being handled, which means, by the way, certain criminal prosecutions are being delayed, and certain civil and family court related issues still being delayed. And there is we don't yet have guidance on specifics. Susan, great question. When will all DMVs be open? Currently, as a reminder, the Poughkeepsie office is by appointment only. Please be patient. The DMV and those offices are administered by the independently elected county clerk, Brad Kendall. Brad Kendall and I are good friends. They're overwhelmed, obviously, by the amount of calls they're having to take. We believe that the clerk has advanced the technology on the phone system so that at the very least you might get some automated information, and the expectation that you may have to just call back later. It is overwhelming. Now, we're not New Jersey. Saw pictures in New Jersey. There are people lined up 3 blocks down the road from their DMV, sitting on coolers and chairs. So I understand the frustration. The good news is you can still schedule by appointment for the Poughkeepsie office. Wappinger office should open a week from now. It should open a week from now, and we'll provide you that additional information. So the Wappinger office should open soon, and then subsequently Millbrook. The Pauling office will remain closed indefinitely because of its size. It is limited, and the clerk has decided that that is not a space that they're going to reopen. And under the financial conditions that we all face, it is one of those things that is going to have to be limited. So please be patient with the staff. I think the clerk will tell you that he would really like you to be patient with the people who work at the DMV. You can be less patient with him and less patient with me. And we understand that as elected officials, we're to take that for you. But please be patient with them. They're trying their best. David, any word on the Think Differently picnic? Yes, we did announce I think 2 weeks ago, we are not going to host the Think Differently picnic this year because of, one, the limitations on organizations to even transport and bring people to a picnic, and then that social interaction this year just not going to work. But we will come up with some creative ways to do some things virtually, and if we can have some event in the fall where maybe people can congregate a little bit more, we'll let you know of that. Heather asked about dance studios. This is still the state still hasn't given clear guidance on dance studios, and so some have functioned under certain limitations. My suggestion is that you go to the New York Forward website. If you have a dance studio, you have it what's called the NAICS code, a National Identification Code, and that can give you some further direction. Certain activities within a setting like that is permitted, some are not. And I don't want to be in the business of deciphering the inconsistencies in the state guidance, but if you have any, present them to us, dutchessbnn.com, or reach out to us and we'll try to help you decipher them as well. Can visitations at OPWDD group homes resume? Visitations can occur at facilities that are governed by OPWDD. They'll have to set their own plans and how they want to administer them, but visitation can occur with certain precautions. I will use this opportunity to tell you that I am absolutely disgusted with the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, not the staff, the good people working very hard. But organizationally, the state of New York is creating an appalling scenario where we're limiting those visitation. They're limiting the access to rehab and day programming, and at the same time, some of the very first cuts that the state of New York wishes to take is on the backs of these programs and these individuals. And we have got direct care workers who have been working tirelessly. They're angels among us. Under really difficult circumstances with limited salaries. The state has been slow in providing assistance financially. And then it was bad enough that those living with developmental disabilities were sort of an afterthought. We fought for weeks to finally get some adherence to visitation. But now they're a target under budget cuts. And I understand, listen, we all have to make budget decisions. I have to make some very difficult ones. But we will not start with the most vulnerable among us. And the state has clearly said to agencies that are administered by OPWDD, you've got to find significant cuts. And that is just unacceptable. It is disgusting, and it is inappropriate. And we're creating a scenario where these individuals who have been, sacrificing the most under the most severe of circumstances, remember, independent of their families, not having interaction, some not aware or understanding what the challenge has been, and now all of a sudden entities that are on their heels financially are being told that they're the first ones to be prepared for cuts, and the state should not let that happen. We ought to back into those things. Let's find other areas to start with. Let's do the things that we're doing here at the local level to find cuts, and we'll continue to argue that point. It is that serious, and the state is setting us back decades because of it, and that is shameful, and it is inappropriate when it comes to those living with developmental disabilities, and we'll continue to argue. Beth, the governor doesn't seem to be in any hurry to address our concerns. Who is urging him to act? Beth, first, it depends on what your concerns are. Every single day, this office and I are on the phone with state leaders expressing with urgency the concerns that residents have. Some are being met, and some the state is not willing to budge on, and that is the reality that we live in. I want to thank Judy Stokes at Dutchess Community College, who advised us that Dutchess Community College will be making an announcement today regarding programming, so look to that, and we'll share those details with you when we get back. Well, first we'll share them during the week, but we'll share them next week when we get back together on Wednesday. Debbie did ask, how long is Phase 4? There's a joke, if you ever watch the movie The Sandlot, there's this, it's sort of like forever, and I don't mean to make light of it. At the moment, Phase 4 is a holding pattern. Phase 4 is the time that the state will evaluate reopening those last of the businesses, theaters, gyms, amusements, and bowling alleys and things of that nature. Everything else is open with certain capacity limitations. So Phase 4 is sort of this holding pattern. And you can understand it to a degree. Rising cases, rising hospitalizations in certain states. Want to be sure that we don't see that here. As I said, no emerging clusters in Dutchess County as of this moment, but be prepared. It is likely that we're going to have to respond to that. But at this point, it is sort of this holding pattern. And hopefully during these weeks of advanced openings and cases holding steady, the restrictions will become less and less restrictive, which is, I think, why you're going to see the malls open. School districts will plan to be open come, will plan their reopening plans come the end of this month and so on. So when will New York State have a decision on opening day hab programs? We don't know yet, and that's something with great interest that we have, and you'll hear me continue to make that argument. When will bars be able to use pool tables? Antoinette, I do not know. And again, that's one of the things that the state is saying. Limited capacity at bars and restaurants, the social activities, those things where you might be engaged in group settings, where you really can't control the spread, that's the concern. And I will say again, to the state's credit, we know where there's been a spread of the disease, it likely is not the air handling system in a shopping mall. But we do and can point to the community spread that occurs in restaurant, bar, tavern settings. That's not to put anyone on notice. We want the businesses to be able to function. It's just to say that those areas where we're in close proximity, where we're talking socially, and frankly probably have had a couple drinks and are a little more relaxed in certain cases, that is what concerns folks regarding the spread. And we've seen in certain states an increase in hospitalization. Interestingly, and they're tracking the positive cases have led now to more hospitalization, but we haven't seen yet a spike in and I say this respectful, having lived it myself, we don't see a spike in deaths in all situations, and it hasn't been tracking now deaths as it did early on in this crisis, this pandemic, but it's all worth watching. Iris, what about car shows? Well, again, first of all, if you all remain in your car, that's just really a traffic jam. That is not necessarily a show. But again, with the limitations that we've mentioned, the social gathering limitations, those activities can occur, but they have to meet those expectations. Not more than 50 people, social distancing, use of face covering. And again, it also then is dependent on the location. Could a municipal park host 50, 60 cars? It could. As long as everyone stays apart from one another. But it is that, it's that cross interaction, that social interaction, physical interaction that we still have to monitor. So we're in the midst of Phase 4. We mentioned that, talked a little bit about that. Want to announce that our drive-through Office for the Aging Senior Picnics will begin on July 28th in the town of Pleasant Valley. So we're, as I said, twice a week. Every Tuesday and Thursday from July 28th to September 3rd, we'll be hosting our annual senior picnics. It's a great meal. We're buying from local businesses, hundreds of lunches from local businesses, milk from Hudson Valley Fresh. You can look them up, great little business, fruit from local farms, and you'll get an invitation in the mail. The invitation, I think, is red. It looks like a picnic table cover or picnic tablecloth, but it's all drive-through. Drive in, we'll provide you a meal, we'll get you some information. We'll say thanks, hopefully wish you on your way, and then you're driving off. So every Tuesday and Thursday, July 28th, invitations are going out to every resident 60 and over. Again, you're going to drive through. We're going to give you that information and that lunch. If you have out of date or unused prescription medications, you can bring those too. We do a drug drop off, so prescription drugs can be collected. They'll be collected by the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office. We're thankful to Sheriff Butch Anderson and the Sheriff's Office and the Dutchess County Stop DWI and Traffic Safety Board. So they'll be there to collect as well. And if you want to volunteer, visit ofa@dutchessny.gov. ofa@dutchessny.gov. Thank you. Or call us at 845-486-2555. And a lot of people volunteered for a lot of things. We're going to be reaching out to you, but if you're interested, please help us take care and participate in that. So if you have a question, write it in the comment section under the live feed. We'll get to you as best we can. We had a great turnout over the 4th of July weekend. Thank you to all of those individuals who partnered with us. Hey, that's my wife's photograph. That's a nice photograph. She took a great picture. That is on an iPhone. Sorry. We were at the Dutchess County Fairgrounds. We want to thank our partners at the Dutchess County Fairgrounds, the Agricultural Society. Thank the Hudson Valley Renegades at Dutchess Stadium, and very thankful to Silo Ridge in hosting, again, 3 simultaneous fireworks displays on the 4th of July. We had a great time. 2,000 cars at Dutchess Fairgrounds, several hundred at Silo Ridge, and I think almost 500 at Dutchess Stadium. Everything went off with a bang. Very nicely done. That was a bad dad joke. The entire event was really well. I'm very, very happy. So many people, really so considerate. We had great music, thanks to iHeartRadio. Very grateful for that sponsorship. Eastdale Village, and thanks to them, Central Hudson Gas and Electric, and Mitch Neshawat and the Neshawat family for sponsoring the fireworks. Grateful for your financial support. And at the same time, we had so many people participate. Really went well. My family had a great time. This was a little bit bittersweet as we've all had to deal with change in lifestyle. This is the first time since 1994 I did not have a 4th of July parade to march in or a time to read the Declaration of Independence. But thank you to all those who participated. We had a great time. And all of the folks behind the scenes, the Dutchess County Department of Public Works, the Emergency Response Team, our Medical Reserve Corps, the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, and our partners at the local level. A lot of local fire departments, local law enforcement entities, and the supervisors and mayors. Great job. Well done. We did it so well that maybe we'll do it again next year. We'll see. But for now, very, very grateful and thankful to all of you who participated. I hope you enjoyed the fireworks. Hope you enjoyed the time out. And thank you for being considerate of one another. Now we're as we move through the summer months, we are working toward a Labor Day weekend event. We're going to spend some time in Dutchess County celebrating and thanking those who labored, if you will, during this entire pandemic. We're hopeful that we can come together in person at Dutchess Stadium the weekend of Labor Day. Details will be coming up. We're going to celebrate frontline workers of all kinds. Remember, during this pandemic, we learned that every job is essential, and shame on anybody who says otherwise. Every job is essential, and some people who never once before had to be on the front lines of an emergency response became frontline responders, and we're grateful, from the truck and the bus drivers to the cashiers and the grocery store clerks. To those at any one of those businesses that remained open through it all, right to our public health and private healthcare professionals, our government public health officials, and emergency responders. We're very grateful to you for all that you've done. In this Labor Day weekend, we're going to celebrate all those who labored away during this pandemic. Hopefully, we'll be able to do it in person. If not, we'll come up with some way of doing it. But it'll be Labor Day weekend. We hope to be at Dutchess Stadium with you, celebrating and giving thanks to all those who worked so very, very hard. So if you have a question, write it below. We'll get to a couple more. I want to thank everyone who participated yesterday in our race town hall or listening town hall on race in this community. Individuals of color offered their experience, their concerns, and in some cases their outright anger. And all of that is valid and all of it is appropriate, and none of it should be anything that we should shy away from. We in this county, I think, have taken very seriously not only our responsibility to listen. We have town hall meetings for those with disabilities. We have town hall meetings for those who are living with addiction. We have town hall meetings for those who are living in poverty or have housing issues. So we have these specific conversations all the time. In fact, we've had 25, 26 of these town hall meetings, but since becoming county executive, I've participated or hosted over 100, probably 100, well, at this point, 150 town hall or community sessions. They're valuable. And to those who participated yesterday, thank you for sharing your concerns. I take it all to heart. My wife will tell you, and those around here will say, I didn't sleep much last night because a lot of it is so very important. And it's not for any of us, certainly none of us who don't understand what it's like to be a person of color, to dismiss any of it. So I don't. Also want to tell you that not only did we hear you, we're listening, and we're going to learn from what you had to say. And all of that is important. And I'd offer to you that when we reestablished the Human Rights Commission, full-time Human Rights Commission, we did it because we had these conversations, and from those conversations came the need to do that. When we banned the box, Dutchess County was one of the first counties in the state to eliminate that box on public employment applications that says if you once committed a crime, check the box here. Only because it doesn't mean that there's not a background check or there aren't those kind of things, but many employers would just throw it out. They wouldn't even pay any attention. Okay, I'll get that updated as well. So we moved forward with Ban the Box, and we were one of the first. That came out of a public dialogue, and the crisis intervention training and the de-escalation training we do with police officers came out of a public dialogue. The need to end the indiscriminate warehousing of souls at a county jail that was built at a time when locking people up and throwing away the key was the way in which this society addressed concerns regarding criminal justice. That came out of dozens and dozens of town hall meetings. Our criminal justice reform and our restorative justice focus came out of town hall meetings. Don't use yesterday as an indication that we're just going to talk and listen. We're going to act on these things too. So I want to thank everyone who participated. Really want to thank Angela Henry who moderated. Very grateful to the stakeholders that participated. You're all going to have a role moving forward. So let's talk about the next steps for us. So thanks for the panelists, those who participated. We're going to take what we've already started working on and we've built upon, and we're going to start talking. We're going to start moving forward with some very specific action steps. So number one, I talked about this at the State of the County in February of this year. Dutchess County is expanding our equal opportunity officer. We're going to hire a diversity and equal opportunity officer. That is a position we have in county government. COVID delayed our motion on that. No more delays. We're going out with an advertisement to fill that position. That person's job is not to run the numbers. That person's job, when hired, and if you have some interest, you should reach out to us, is going to be going out into the community and expanding our net to make sure that we are reaching out to communities all throughout Dutchess County to encourage you to participate in the employment practices of government. We are the hiring entity, if you will, the civil service agent for every town, village, and city in Dutchess County. So our diversity officer, we're going to move forward with that. We're going to hire an individual who's going to take on the responsibility of addressing equal opportunity and greater diversity in our workforce. We're limited under civil service law, and I will tell you, in some ways, the civil service law sucks. It is an old, out-of-date structure that was meant to protect from nepotism, but what it's created is an institutional structure where if you know the test and can take a test, you are in the top three we have to hire from you. But there isn't an effort within that civil service structure to be more open, and we're going to combat that. I promise you that. So the goal is, number one, hire the diversity and equal opportunity officer. That will happen. Number two, we are moving forward with this law enforcement collaborative. We have every police chief and every police agency on board. We now have every supervisor and mayor with a police entity on board. We've identified both The stakeholders that the governor and the president have identified need to be a part of the process. There are some formal organizations, from public defenders to formerly incarcerated, that have to be a part of this process. We have them, part of our Criminal Justice Council. We're also going to expand that to include other parties. So we'll have a whole, if you will, steering group or a group that will provide some discussion and direction for us. And every police agency in the county is working together collaboratively with the sheriff's office. So Dutchess County Sheriff and the sheriff's office is working to make sure that we're coordinating this. Ken Roman and the Department of Emergency Response will be coordinating this as well. So next step for us is to expand that collaboration to include those external stakeholders and to set the time to meet with every supervisor, mayor with the police agency. The governor's executive order requires that we all update our policies, which we will do, and we'll create a uniform update so that policies and practices are universal. Every municipality that has a police agency will have to do what I did last night. So every supervisor and mayor, if you have a police agency that you're responsible for, you will be required to have a public hearing to listen to stakeholders, to listen to communities and individuals of all backgrounds in your community before adopting these policy changes. Very important that you all go through the same exercise that we will go through, and that is the next step, to make sure that local leaders, all these layers in New York, sometimes don't all function on the same wavelength. So this is a goal to make that happen, and I promise you we will. And then lastly, as far as initial next steps, I've asked Assistant Commissioner for Youth Services, Carmen Smallwood, who participated last night. We want to accelerate the Path to Promise initiative. This is our focus on that pipeline from birth to job. So from kindergarten to employment, from birth to employment, to really strengthen what we do. And I'm going to tell you this, the goal here is to also be sure, and Satara Brown said this last night, and she's right. If we spend $1 on youth enhancement, youth improvement, youth empowerment, we ought to know what we're getting, and we ought to be able to measure success. And so Carmen's taking on that responsibility. I've asked, and that is her job to begin with, but we're going to push now aggressively on the Path to Promise. We don't have a lot of cash in Dutchess County at the moment, but we're going to do what we can to move that forward. And we are prepared to move forward with investment in the Youth Empowerment Center we've talked about for a few years. I have asked our finance team to be prepared for that. It is time to take the resources that the Path to Promise wants to organize together, along with the collaboration that's occurred throughout Dutchess County as a coalition of groups that want to invest from day one to healthcare in providing for youth and family support, youth empowerment and family support. Dutchess County is prepared to move forward, and that will mean millions of dollars in capital and programmatic investment. And those are the three next steps that we're going to take right now. So be prepared to look for those things. We'll take your questions. There'll be great opportunities. But those are the next three steps that we are taking immediately. And we're going to take seriously our responsibility to continue to move that ball down the court. I don't play basketball. I was never good at it. But I do like the analogy because it's necessary. And we're going to continue to do better. That's our goal for everyone of every background. But here in this case, we definitely are focused on ensuring that we address those concerns that were voiced last night, and I'm grateful for the people who participated. Ray, are there mandates for food handlers to get tested before handling and preparing meals for the public? The short answer is no. They're not testing requirements, but if you're exhibiting any symptoms or you feel as if you've come into contact with someone, testing is available. You should do that, but there is no testing requirement. If salons opened during phase 2 and were tested, right? So you opened in phase 2, you went through that test. Regions that moved into phase 3 no longer require testing. Got it. So if you were opened in phase 2, if salons were open in phase 2 and you were tested, and you're now in the region where we're in phase 3, there's no longer any testing requirements. So if you were tested in phase 2 in Dutchess County once, you no longer have to be tested, but be considerate if you feel as if you contracted the disease or maybe showing some symptoms. That's what you should know. If we worked the entire time, do we get an extra $600 a week like people on unemployment? Frank, no, you do not. You have to be unemployed, and the unemployment benefit, which was provided by the federal government, comes with that. And what I will tell you is that first, none of this, everything that's happened these last several months is all very contradictory, and none of it is always entirely fair. This disease has been unfair to a lot of people. But I will also tell you that we are seeing at least some slowing in the loss of revenue and sales tax, et cetera. Now, that's important to the county, but sales tax revenue is a good indicator of where people are spending their money, and people are starting to spend money again. So I just would offer to you that is a federal government decision. We expect Congress will have that addressed before the end of July. If you have any other questions, write them down in the live feed, in the comment section of the live feed. I want to thank you for participating again today. We are scheduled to be live with you again next Wednesday. We will provide any additional information that becomes available in the meantime. So I want to just recap quickly. We are in Phase 4. Phase 4 does not yet include gyms, theaters, amusement parks, bowling alleys. Those are not yet permitted under Phase 4. No guidance yet. However, today, the governor announced malls can reopen this Friday if they meet certain ventilation system requirements. That's good news. Schools are to develop their reopening plans. Guidance will be provided school districts by July 13th. Schools will then develop their reopening plans by July 31st, and the state of New York will approve or not those plans during the first week of August. Dutchess County will convene our school superintendents after July 13th, before July 31st, to help decipher some of the guidance. Several states were added to the travel advisory: Delaware, Kansas, and Oklahoma. If you've traveled to those states and you come back home, you must self-quarantine. There are fines associated. The state of New York is not joking about it, so we just want you to be aware of that. And again, if you have tested positive, you're going to receive a phone call from us. It's a volunteer or an employed contact tracer. They're going to ask you a few questions. The good news at the moment is we have had very few total positive cases per day. Yesterday, new positives were 4. Day before were 2. And if you look at the numbers, the community spread is very low. However, we do have a whole column of people who are either unknown or unreached these last several days. Meaning you're not answering the phones. Please make an effort to do that so that we can work with you to provide for your benefit. Again, not intrusive. Just going to ask you to try to hunker down, be safe, and talk through anyone you may have come into contact with. Here we go. Carrie, are temporary employees entitled to the separation incentive? This is the Dutchess County government separation incentive. The answer is yes. Temporary, now there could be certain scenarios, and you will want to reach out to the Human Resources Department the Human Resources Department, but generally speaking, yes, because the temp designation is more of a budgetary issue. It doesn't reflect on necessarily the job. So the short answer is yes, but please reach out to Human Resources, get your application in. If you're interested, Peggy, I'm a senior. How can I get a mail-in ballot for November? You can reach out to DutchessElections.com or visit DutchessNY.gov, the Dutchess County Board of Elections. If you need that phone number, just call us. If you're not online and you want to get that information, you can call 486-2000. That's 486-2000, Dutchess County's number, my office numbers. We'll get you that contact information, and you can make a request for an absentee ballot. Dutchess Community College is adding some additional information, so we're going to go right to the videotape. Here we go. From Dutchess Community College to end today. Whether you are attending DCC this fall or are changing your plans due to COVID-19, you are in luck. So, DCC will be delivering instructions primarily remotely and have several options. Plus, thanks to the CARE Act, we are distributing directly to students. Those enrolled in the fall can receive $500 in cash, and then students taking 6 to 11 credits can get $250. Okay. Tuition is still the lowest in the state of New York at $2,175. I feel like I'm at $2,175 per semester. and because Judy Stokes may be watching, saving you thousands for when you transfer or enter the workforce. And so, again, Dutchess Community College will be doing most of their programming remotely, virtually. You do qualify if you are an enrolled student with 11 credits or more for $250 or $500 cash to offset your costs as part of the federal CARES Act. That's what we have. And so, as a Dutchess Community College graduate myself, it's the best investment and the best education you're going to get. Certainly, it's worth the dollars. And frankly, under the circumstances, do you really want to travel out of state? Just go to Dutchess Community College. We'd love to have you. And apparently, you'll be able to take courses anywhere, anytime. Megan, is the 14-day quarantine mandatory? I mean, the short answer is yes. It's a precautionary It is a precautionary quarantine, which means the state of New York is asking you to voluntarily quarantine. If you choose not to voluntarily quarantine, you will be mandated to quarantine, and if you violate that, you could be subject to as much as a $10,000 fine. And I'd offer to you, if you're in a sports league or you're playing, if you're traveling for some reason to some other state, this quarantine applies to you. And all I would offer is, especially if you're in an organization where you may have traveled and you've come back, it's likely that there's public knowledge of that. And what that means is that the state may call up the organization and say, well, you sent a team to, I don't know, I shouldn't use Pennsylvania, can I? Kansas. You went to Kansas to play baseball and you came back, you would have to quarantine for 14 days. And the short answer is it is mandatory. I mean, we're asking you to do it, and if you don't, the state will mandate you do it. So that's important to know. Last but not least, when will the DMV open without an appointment? Department of Motor Vehicles is a state-run institution, so the answer is we don't know. We don't know. Even though DMV is administered by the county clerk and they do a wonderful job, they're under a lot of stress. Please be a lot of pressure. Please be patient. The state has not said when you will be able to access DMV without an appointment. So please, in person by appointment. If you have any questions, you can visit dutchessny.gov. Thank you again for joining us. We will be back with you 1 week from today. If there's any additional information, we'll provide it. And when we get back together next week, we will include some more detailed information about what the colleges are doing throughout Dutchess. You learned about Dutchess Community College. We'll include some others. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being here. Thanks for asking your questions. In the meantime, be safe, stay well, and be kind to each other.